They say every generation believes it's living through the biggest change in history, but this time, they might actually be right. Because what's coming by 2030 isn't just another cycle, or a recession, or a temporary market dip. It's a full-scale transformation of how the world works, how we live, how we earn, how we even define ownership and freedom. The scary part? Most people still think it's business as usual. Look around, the signs are everywhere. The global economy is slowing down, debt is rising faster than productivity, and artificial intelligence is already doing things that were science fiction just a few years ago. Governments keep printing, corporations keep automating, and people keep pretending that next year things will go back to normal. But there's no going back, because this time, the system itself is changing. And by 2030, the very idea of what it means to have a job, to own property, or to build wealth will look completely different. If that sounds dramatic, it's because it is. But let's be honest, it's not all doom and gloom. What's coming isn't necessarily the end, it's a reset. A painful one, yes, but also a massive opportunity for those who understand it early. So let's start with the first domino: artificial intelligence. Right now, AI is doing to the job market what the steam engine did to the 1800s, but 100 times faster. Jack Kelly from Forbes called it a transformation window of 10 to 30 years, where nearly half of all jobs will either disappear or be fundamentally changed. Think about that. Not just blue-collar jobs, but white-collar too. Finance, law, journalism, even parts of medicine. McKinsey projects that by 2030, 30% of current US jobs could be automated. Goldman Sachs goes further. 300 million jobs worldwide could vanish or change beyond recognition. We used to think automation meant robots on factory floors, but the new wave is invisible. It's in the spreadsheets, in the emails, in the Zoom calls. It's the AI that drafts your contract, writes your code, even creates your marketing ad. It's fast, it's cheap, and it doesn't sleep. CEOs love it. Workers, not so much. Ray Dalio warned about this years ago. He called it a great deleveraging, where technology boosts productivity but displaces workers faster than new roles appear. Larry Fink at BlackRock says we're already seeing the restructuring of white-collar work. Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan predicts that within 15 years, most repetitive tasks will be automated. Bill Ackman thinks the timeline might be even shorter, as corporations rush to cut costs and maximize margins. And you can already see it happening. Data entry, bookkeeping, customer service, gone or going. Paralegal work, contract drafting, research, automated. Even creative work isn't safe. Tools like ChatGPT and DALL-E can generate content, design, and copy in seconds. A 2024 Pew report said 30% of media jobs could be automated by 2035. So what survives? Human judgment, empathy, leadership, the things machines still can't replicate. But here's the catch. Those jobs will be fewer and more competitive. The rest? Replaced or redefined. Now combine that with another reality. The global economy itself is slowing down. According to PwC's World in 2050 report, global growth rates will continue to fall through the 2020s. Emerging economies like China, India, and Indonesia will keep rising, but even they'll eventually slow as they mature. Developed nations, the US, Europe, Japan, will face aging populations, declining productivity, and ballooning debt. The world's population will hit 8.5 billion by 2030, with over a billion people above 65. 2/3 will live in cities. More megacities, more demand for housing, food, and energy, but less growth to pay for it all. And it's not just demographics. Climate change, political tension, and trade wars are all pushing the system closer to the edge. PwC's John Hawksworth warned that protectionism, countries closing themselves off, could slow global growth even more. We're already seeing it with the US and China. What started as tariffs has turned into a tech Cold War, one side controlling chips, the other controlling supply chains. And every time the world divides, innovation slows. Meanwhile, the planet keeps heating up. The Red Cross predicts that by 2030, 150 million people will need humanitarian aid because of climate disasters. Floods, droughts, fires, not far-off problems, but annual events now. Whole regions of Africa and Asia could become unlivable. Food systems under pressure, insurance markets collapsing, and migration waves triggering new political crises. And then, there's energy. the paradox no one wants to talk about. We all agree we need to cut carbon, but the same economic growth that lifts people out of poverty also drives fossil fuel demand. The International Energy Agency says carbon emissions won't peak until 2040, yet to meet the Paris targets we need net zero by then. That means we're locked in a self-contradiction. The more we grow, the harder it gets to save the planet. So, AI taking jobs, economies slowing, climate straining resources, and energy markets pulling in opposite directions. What does that mean for you, for me, for anyone trying to build wealth or freedom in the next decade? It means that the old playbook, work hard, save money, buy property, is being rewritten. Because ownership itself is changing. The World Economic Forum published an essay back in 2016 that went viral. Welcome to 2030, I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. It was written by Ida Auken, a Danish MP. In it, she describes a world where everything is rented, shared, or automated. You don't own your house, your car, or even your clothes. You subscribe to them. You pay only when you use them. In her world, clean energy is free, transport is automated, food is delivered instantly, and AI knows what you need before you do. On paper, it sounds efficient. In practice, it sounds controlled. She writes, "Sometimes I get annoyed that I have no privacy. Nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know everything I do is recorded. I just hope nobody will use it against me." That line hits differently now, doesn't it? Because if AI controls the economy and data controls AI, then whoever controls the data controls everything. And in a world where you don't own property, don't own products, and maybe don't even own your labor, what's left to call your own? Privacy becomes a luxury. Independence becomes a subscription. And freedom becomes something you experience only within the limits of your algorithm. That's not a conspiracy, that's just economics. When everything becomes a service, control shifts to the service provider. It's convenient, until it isn't. So, here's the problem in one sentence. Technology is outpacing our ability to adapt socially, politically, and economically. But here's the good news. There's always opportunity during transition. Every collapse creates new winners. The Industrial Revolution destroyed millions of manual jobs, but it created factories, cities, and a middle class. The internet killed travel agencies but gave birth to Google, Amazon, and the digital economy. The 2030 transition will do the same, but the opportunities will be uneven. Jobs that require creativity, human connection, or strategic thinking will thrive. Anything repetitive will vanish. Investors who understand how value shifts during disruption will rise. Those who wait for governments to fix it will get left behind. Think about this. By 2030, Asia will dominate the global economy. China, India, Indonesia, and Brazil will be the growth engines, while Western markets slow down. Capital will follow demographics, and demographics are moving east. That means investors who once focused only on New York or London will start looking at Jakarta, Mumbai, and São Paulo. The middle class in these regions is expanding fast, and with it, demand for real estate, tech, infrastructure, and energy. So even in a slowing world, there are growth pockets. The smart money is already there. Meanwhile, the Western middle class faces a harder reality. Automation reducing wages, housing becoming unaffordable, and retirement systems stretched thin. It's no wonder people are anxious. When you remove job security, property ownership, and privacy all at once, you're left with a society that feels powerless. That's how populism grows. That's how people start questioning democracy or turning to extremes. And when trust breaks, markets follow. This isn't just about economics anymore, it's about identity. Because when people stop believing that work leads to progress or that ownership leads to freedom, the entire system starts to wobble. And that's what's happening now. The market still looks stable on the surface, but underneath, everything's shifting. Jobs, money, even values. We're witnessing the end of one model of capitalism and the birth of another, one driven by data instead of labor, by algorithms instead of effort. So what can you do? First, understand that skills are the new currency. Deleuze was right. Those who prepare now will shape the world of tomorrow. Critical thinking, adaptability, digital fluency, these will be worth more than degrees or titles. The education system still teaches people for jobs that won't exist in 10 years. Don't wait for it to catch up. Second, rethink ownership. The own-nothing model isn't just philosophical, it's financial. Renting your lifestyle might seem convenient, but it makes you dependent. Owning real assets, land, property, or even decentralized digital assets might be one of the last ways to preserve independence. Third, diversify. Geographically, technologically, mentally. Don't bet your future on one country, one system, or one currency. The world is fragmenting between AI haves and have-nots, between data economies and resource economies. You want exposure to both. And finally, remember this. Collapses aren't ends, they're resets. The system breaks when it's built on outdated assumptions. In the 2008 crisis, we realized that infinite debt couldn't support infinite growth. In the 2030 crisis, we'll realize that infinite automation can't replace human purpose. There's a limit to how much we can outsource to machines before we start eroding the social fabric that keeps everything functioning. You can't run an economy on efficiency alone, you need meaning. That's the real challenge of the next decade. Not just surviving AI or inflation, but redefining what progress means in a world where everything can be automated. Because if everything becomes easy, what's left to value? By 2030, we'll probably see two worlds forming. One hyper-connected, efficient, comfortable, but monitored. The other more local, human, slower, but freer. Some people will choose the convenience of the smart city. Others will move to smaller communities, off-grid or decentralized. The tension between these worlds will define the next phase of civilization. In a strange way, Ida Oken's vision and Ray Dalio's warning describe the same future, one where power shifts away from individuals and towards systems. The difference is whether we adapt or surrender. The next collapse won't look like the Great Depression or 2008. It won't be banks collapsing, it'll be expectations collapsing. The belief that jobs are forever, that growth is endless, that ownership equals freedom. When those ideas finally break, that's when the reset begins. And those who see it early, who build skills, networks, and assets outside the system, won't just survive it, they'll lead it. Because after every collapse, there's a rebuilding. And the world that rises after 2030 might actually be better. Cleaner, more efficient, maybe even fairer. But getting there will be messy. The next few years will test our resilience, our adaptability, and our ability to stay human in a world that keeps automating everything human out of existence. So if you take one thing from this, don't wait for the collapse to start. It's already happening. Quietly, in algorithms, in debt charts, in job descriptions being rewritten by machines. The future doesn't crash overnight. It erodes slowly, then suddenly. And when it does, you'll want to be the person who saw it coming. Because freedom, in a controlled world, doesn't come from what you own. It comes from what you understand. Watch the next video and see how the people who understand where the money's moving next always win. And if you're serious about staying ahead of that shift, hit subscribe. You'll want to see what's coming next.